Film is a disease, Frank Capra said. When it infects your bloodstream, it takes over as the number one hormone. It plays Iago to your psyche. As with heroin, the antidote to film is more film.
Hello and welcome to my Sailor Heart podcast. This podcast you are listening to, in case you've never been here before, is where I take two films brought together by one topic or theme and then trivia to go with it. So that's always fun. And be warned, of course, that there will be spoilers in this episode for the two films we are talking about. So today's episode is You're Gonna Need a Bigger Shark, The Meg from 2018, and Jaws from 1975. And some corrections from the last show is Kevin Peter Hall was not the alien from Alien. I had thought it was. The alien from Alien was actually Bolaji Badeo. He was the alien in Alien. So there you go there. And then on this episode, I mentioned Cliff Curtis was in Once We're Warriors. But of course, I say Only the Warriors or something like that. So it is not that. It is Once We're Warriors. And I have a problem with, is it Lorraine Gary or Lorraine Gray? Did my computer autocorrect? But it is Lorraine Gary in Jaws. She plays the wife and mother of the children. And if there's anything else I missed, please let me know or send me some recommendations or some movies you want me to talk about or whatever. You want to be on the show, just reach out and ask me. You can send any questions or comments to mysailorheart@gmail.com. So that's that. The newest movies that I've watched at home and in the theaters. Now, before I start on this, I have mixed reviews on this segment of my show. Two people say they like that I read what I watch. They enjoy it. The other two say it's fine, but shorten it, or that it's too long. So I'm trying to meet a happy medium, but I do enjoy this part of the show where I tell you what I've been watching because I enjoy watching movies. That's what I do on my days off. So let's get into it, shall we? So I had everybody saying, hey, why are you doing The Meg and Jaws? Why don't you do like 47 Meters Down and Jaws? And I said, well, because that's what, my cousin's wife chose. He's on the show with me today, my cousin Chip. His wife said you should do The Meg and Jaws. And turns out my cousin had not seen The Meg. I thought he had. So he had never seen it. So it was good because he was able to see The Meg and Jaws for the first time, which was awesome. So 47 Meters Down is on Netflix, and it's from 2017, and it was pretty good. It was really cool, and the ending had a little coolness to it that I won't give away. But anyway, they drop this cage down, cable breaks, these people, two girls are stuck in a cage, and they're 47 meters down, and they got to figure out how to get out and how to get help. And I tell you, there's a scene where she swims across this chasm, and then she can't find her way back. I would totally be lost. I'd be like, I have no idea where I'm going, because everything's dark around there. But anyway, then I saw Ip Man 2, because I had seen Ip Man 1, and I started to watch Ip Man 2 from 2010. And I got halfway through it, and I was like, not as good as the first one, but I was like, oh, well. So I stopped watching it. Then the other day I said, hey, I'm going to put this on. I'm going to finish watching it. And I did, and it was really good. It got better at the end. It was awesome. Had an evil white guy. It's pretty cool. Then on iTunes, they had Robocop for $5. I said, I can't pass that up. 1987 classic Robocop. So I got it, and I watched it, and it is really good. It is so different that just for that time, for 87, it was just totally different. I just remember loving that movie. I really loved the second one. First one is really good, but the second one I remember owning on video, and I would watch it over and over and over again. It's really good. So, of course, I highly recommend that. Go to iTunes, get it for $5. Fuck it. Then I saw on my Criterion collection, which I've talked about before on the channel, Criterion channel, they have The Night of the Hunter, which I did a show on. And this was Charles Laughton Directs The Night of the Hunter. It was from 2002, and it's 2 hours and 39-minute making of, and it was very good. And it was not only like a making of, but it was almost like outtakes of, them filming and doing a take, and then they'd mess it up, so they had to redo it. And it was from different angles, and you would get to see the actors and everything, how they normally were before they got into character. And it was really neat. I really enjoyed it. It's 2 hours and 39 minutes, but it kind of breezed through. It was pretty cool. So if you like that old movie, check it out. And then on Vudu, they have Midnight Run. You got to watch it with ads, but from 1988, Robert De Niro and Charles Grodin, and growing up, I always wanted to be. When I was a teenager, I started thinking, like, what am I going to be when I grow up, when I get older, or when I get out of high school? And I thought, I want to be a bounty hunter or a detective or a police officer, because, of course, I grew up watching movies. So, I see Midnight Run. He's a bounty hunter. I see the movie The Hunter from 1980 with Steve McQueen. He's a bounty hunter. I'm like, that's awesome. I want to be a bounty hunter. Boba Fett, he's a bounty hunter. I'm like, that's awesome. But then all the movies that I love, Lethal Weapon, he's a cop. He's a crazy cop. Undercover, I could do that. You got detectives, Simon and Simon, Rockford Files, all those shows that I grew up, Magnum PI. I was like, shit, I can be a detective and just do that. But, now with the way the world is, how do you be a detective when people can just go, oh, I bought this app that traced my girlfriend's phone and I know where she is? It's like, oh, okay, I have no job now. Anyway, maybe this is why this thing runs long, because I talk about this shit. Anyway, so then I'm looking up. I always see this movie called Knightriders, Knight Writers, and I thought, that's interesting. It's from 1981, has Ed Harris in it, and I go, what is this movie? And I look it up, and it looks weird, where it's like Renaissance, but they're on motorcycles, so they do jousting, but on motorcycles. And it's total like SCA stuff, if you know anybody in SCA. Directed by George Romero, and it's not a zombie movie. And it seemed like at this time, the story was that he went and saw like SCA type stuff of fighting and went to Renaissance festivals and fell in love with it and wanted to do a movie around it. So he did. But it's like a 2-hour movie, and I was just kind of like, kind of drugged. So I would say skip it. But if you're a George Romero fan and you got to see it, then go ahead and see it. And it's got I'm going to draw a blank again, motherfucker. The guy that does the special effects, and he played Sex Machine in From Dusk Till Dawn, Tom Savini. It's got him in it. It's really cool. Then I saw The Comedians in Cars Getting Coffee, the new season of that. That was pretty good, from 2019. Then I was telling my wife about the shark movies and stuff, and she had never seen Open Water. I thought she did, but she hadn't. That's from 2004. I'd been talking to Joe Merle about it. Anybody playing the drinking game, that's time to drink. Whenever I say Joe Merle, there I said it again, take another drink. So she said, I never heard of this. So I told her about it, and she watched it, and she was like, oof, it was pretty, I'm like, oh, could you imagine? She's like, yeah, no thanks. And then I saw Red Heat from 1988, because I was doing did a Talking Poop episode of his show, Jason Bromley's Talking Poop podcast, and watched Red Heat from 1988. I went and bought it on DVD and Blu-ray. Actually, I bought it on Blu-ray, and it looks really good, and it's a good movie. It was better than I remember it. Same thing with him. So if you want to hear us talk about that, it'll be on in about 2 or 3 weeks. So check it out. And then I saw a movie that was not too good. It was called Gods of Shark Reef. Joe Morrow, you might like it, 1958, but probably not. Stay away from it. That was just so everybody could drink. But one that Joe Morrow will like, that one was on Amazon Prime in case anybody cares, but no, you should stay away from it. But then I saw a YouTube video of Edgar Wright talking about some movies that he grew up with. And one of the movies he grew up with and remembered watching was 1976's Live Like a Cop, Die Like a Man. It's an Italian movie. Dark-haired cop, blonde-haired cop, and they're basically Starsky and Hutch, but if there were no rules. They're on this special force that's like an undercover force, like a special unit, and they are trying to investigate who killed their buddy because they're investigating this thing, and that's why their captain or whatever got killed. So it's really cool. It was Italian. It's on Amazon Prime. It was in Italian. You had to read the subtitles. So Jason Bromley, you're out. But Joe Morrow, you might check it out. It was pretty fun. The opening is just really cool. It's like this girl gets her purse stolen. These two cops get on their bikes and go after him. And so great. Then I saw from 1967, because I listened to a podcast with Quentin Tarantino. It was a 3-hour podcast from the New Beverly people. It's called Pure Cinema. And they were talking about what is going to be at the New Beverly, which is Quentin Tarantino's theater. What's going to be there through the month of July up until Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. And then it'll be showing that. And so it was all movies that have to do with pretty much either the character of Rick Dalton from Once Upon a Time in Hollywood or that time in Hollywood, 1969, 70, like late 60s, early 70s. So what I watched was Moving Target, a.k.a. Death on the Run from 1967. I found this on YouTube. And because you look up Moving Target, another movie pops up with, what's that guy's name from... Jason Bateman. Jesus Christ. Can't think of any names today. So Moving Target from 1967, because the other one's from like 87, so don't pick that one. And that was good. It was fun, and it was neat because in Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, which I saw next, 2019, was in there's a scene where Rick Dalton supposedly goes to Italy to do some movies. And one of the movies he does is like a cop film. Or whatever, an Italian action adventure. And that's basically that movie. They're jumping a bridge. It's that movie just with inserts from the exact same camera angle of Leonardo DiCaprio driving. So it's a Rick Dalton character in that movie. So it's pretty cool. And so that was neat to see. Then when I saw Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, I was like, oh, wow, hey, there's that scene. And he had mentioned it in the 3-hour thing. Like, yeah, I even put that chase scene in there. So it was cool. And Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, I liked. I'm going to go see it again on Friday. I'm not sure how I feel about it. I know that I really liked it, but I also know that it's not like his other movies. So it's a little different. I know it's a love letter to Hollywood, so I love that. It's a love letter to movies, all this stuff. Something that I'm going to be doing coming up, I'm going to do a solo episode of Quentin Tarantino, of Pulp Fiction, and everything that I learned from Quentin Tarantino, meaning every movie that he's ever talked about that I just write down every single thing. If he mentions, oh yeah, so-and-so, I liked her in this movie, then I write it down, and then I go and try to find that movie and try to see it, to see who this actress is that he talked about and see if I'm going to like her. And usually I do. And usually I like most of the stuff that he recommends. Probably all of the stuff. But I don't mean to sound like a kiss ass, and I'm not trying to be Quentin Tarantino. He just has some really good recommendations. Then I saw Point Blank from 2019. It's on Netflix. It's that new one. It was all right. It was good. It was a fun little action movie. Me and the wife watched it before going to bed one morning, because we go to bed in the mornings because we work at night. Then I saw, the last of my movies here, is C.C. and Company from 1970. So in Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, there's a preview that they're playing on the drive-in. I think it's at the drive-in theater, and it's CC and Company. It's a Joe Namath movie, and William Smith is in it, and it's a fun little movie. And Joe Namath, being a football player, I would think he couldn't act, but he's actually pretty good. He's like natural and just didn't seem like he was overacting and underacting. It just seemed good. And it was about this motorcycle gang, because those were big after Easy Rider. Motorcycle movies went crazy. There's a motorcycle gang, and Margaret's in it, and it's just really cool and fun and like a cheap little made film, and got some good music in it, and it was just fun. It's on Amazon Prime, so if you want to check that out, check it out. It's not one of the best that I've ever seen. It wasn't full of action, but it was a good little story. It was interesting, and I love those 70s type of movies. So that's what I have seen at home and in the theater. And I know it went 15 minutes long, but hey, that's what you get, because I'll figure out how to tighten it down, make it better. So everybody, rate and review the show, and tell your friends, subscribe, and all that good stuff. See me on Facebook and Instagram under My Cellular Heart Podcast. Look at me on Twitter under For the Love of Film, and or Phil the Movie Man. Other than that, I guess we will get to the show. So here it is.
And you heard about all the Marvel stuff, right?
Yeah. I don't know. I might be done with Marvel. I mean, not completely, but yeah, I'm just kind of, You know what I mean? Yeah, you know what I mean? I mean, I know you're excited because you're a comic book guy. But me, it's like I was saying, like you'll hear on one of the podcasts, on the Spider-Man one, where I was like, Spider-Man was good, but I'm kind of like, okay, like, I'm done. All this new, the Doctor Strange horror movie, that sounds cool. Because like Spider-Man was all trippy when he was, was messing with his, what he saw and everything. And that was cool. And so that'll be trippy like that, where it's going to be like real weird. And Blade is cool because I like Marshall Ali. And so all that'll be, it'll be good. I'm sure they'll do good. But it's like, the Disney's running the world now, so they're just going to come out with those and Star Wars movies and keep going and keep going. And
yeah, it makes me happy.
I get it, but it's also like, but I was telling, I think it'll come back around maybe where it'll be like, but then again, it's going to end up being like Disney knows how, okay, we're going to put this on moratorium for this long, then we're going to put it out again. So then the new kids go, oh, I'm going to buy this. Is this good? Is Great Mouse Detective any good? And then they're into Great Mouse Detective, and then they're into Little Mermaid and Lion King, and, and then it just... Well,
that's actually going to go away, too, because of Disney+.
Yeah, true. Oh, yeah, I didn't think of that. Yeah.
Everything is going to be on Disney+. There is no pulling it back, and then, everything.
Yeah, so that'll be, because that was, I think, Disney's smart thing to do, was where you'd meet a young kid who was like, I just saw Aladdin, it's really cool, and it's like, that came out in like 92, like, wow, But yeah, that'll be different, but I guess, yeah.
Well, they got to change with the times, so.
Right, and it will be cool that you can get all those Disney movies, Sunday night movies that we grew up on, that you can watch, Escape to Witch Mountain, The Computer Wore Tennis Shoes, even Steamboat Willie, like all that stuff. Did you see that Lego Steamboat Willie that they have? It's black and white Legos. It's him on a boat. It's him on the steamboat, and it comes with a little figure, but it's black and white Legos, so it looks like the black and white cartoon. It's really cool.
That's awesome.
And it's only like $35.
But yeah, the whole concept of this next phase is basically because they're doing phases smaller,
right?
And phase 4 is basically setting the stage for phase 5.
Right, exactly. And then there'll be phase 6, and then when I'm an old man, there'll be phase 30, and my wife would say you're already an old man. But yeah, I mean, and then that's what people are saying about the Eternals. Like, who are the Eternals? And it's like same thing that everybody said about Guardians of the Galaxy is like, what is who are they? And then all of a sudden everybody's like, oh, I love them. So.
Well, and that was kind of their fuck up because they were supposed to do the Inhumans.
Right.
And then all of a sudden they just decided to relinquish the Inhumans so that they could try and make a TV show of it. And they royally fucked it up by not using an actual good budget. And so they're like, okay, well, if we're not using the Inhumans, we have to use some other space thing. And then they're like, all right, we'll use the family of Thanos, the Eternals, and then it changes everything. So.
Yeah. But I also heard that somebody said, like, that's the history of humankind or whatever. It, like, spans all these years. And so, that'll be neat. But, yeah, I need to pull out my Marvel book and start looking up all these things that came out. Like, Shakaraka. What's that guy's name? Shari? Whatever. The Chinese guy that's going to actually, there's going to be a real Mandarin.
Shang
Li. Yeah.
Something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, because they want this to actually be one of those ones where they're not like, oh, they're whitewashing. They want it to actually,
yeah.
Because everybody was getting pissed off about Iron Fist, but oh, you made him this actor, he's a white guy, and everybody's like, yeah, in the comics he was a white guy, like his family, they crashed, they were white, well, and he was found,
he was found by the trained. Well, it's like, did you hear about? You heard about the whole Little Mermaid thing where everybody's pissed that she's black? Like, why? Like, it doesn't matter. She's a mermaid that grew up. And if you're in the South Pacific, makes sense. Hello, boom. Yeah. So, but yeah, it'd be like, it's weird. But anyway, okay. Well, I'll keep that. And then I guess I'll say, hey, here's Chip with me today, even though I introduced it already in the monologue. But say, hey, Chip, you got anything to promote or to some of your favorites that you thought about lately, or some movies that you might have recently saw or something? Or
not really, because I've been kind of busy.
Oh, yeah, he's moving all the way from Colorado to Florida.
Yeah, so I haven't really had much time of anything other than, like, in my downtime, play a few video games. Got the new Marvel game for the Switch, so
cool.
Been playing the hell out of that thing when I can. That's pretty much about it. Other than watching the movies we're going to be talking about today.
Yeah. What character are you playing in your Marvel game?
Right now I switched it once I unlocked everybody that I wanted. I have Wolverine as my main, because you can have 4. It's 4 characters that you can interact with and kind of have
cool.
switch between them. And I have Wolverine, Nightcrawler,
cool,
Psylocke, and Deadpool.
Cool. And can you pick? Does Why did I just draw a blank on his name? Nightcrawler. Can you pick where you want him to teleport to, or does he just teleport randomly?
You kind of point in a direction.
Oh, okay.
And use one of his abilities, and it's basically a teleporting to attack kind of a thing.
Right.
But then there is another ability that I believe kind of teleports you to multiple spots to do some hits.
Oh, okay. Like a super duper thing where it'd be
just like in the White House shot on the X-Men movie.
Fucking badass. Don't get me. You knew that get me excited. I just got a boner. That was. I was on the last episode, which you haven't listened to yet, but you will. We were talking about like moments, like hero moments. Like we were talking about how the Marvel movies don't really have hero moments that you can think of right offhand. They do have some. And I was telling him, even though Jason Bromley does not like the Andrew Garfield Spider-Man movies, I said one of my favorite parts is when that kid is getting ready to take on Rhino, and he walks up and says, how about I take this one? And the kid's like, okay. And I'm like, and when I was telling Jason, I got this chill, and I was like, oh, I just got, like, all the hair stood up on my body. Like, that's fucking awesome. And he's like, yeah. And then we were talking about Return of the Jedi with Luke in the Sarlacc pit, and R2 shooting him the thing, and he was like, yeah, instant hard on, 8 years old. I'm like, yeah, exactly. So, but it's those, those cool moments, and I explained yours with the Emperor and all that. So, but yeah. So anyway, yes, we're here for. So Joe Merle goes, why the Meg? Why didn't you pick like Open Water or The Reef or 47 Meters Down? And I said, well, because his wife said you should do the Meg and Jaws, and so we said, okay, we'll do the Meg and Jaws. And I said, and he goes, the Meg's good and fun, but he's like, but 47 Meters Down is more like a tense, thing, which I just recently saw. It's on Netflix. And they're making that sequel, 48 Meters, and it's uncaged, where they're not in a cage this time. But it was pretty good. But yeah, I said, no, we're doing the Meg just because, and Jaws because Chip's never seen it. So I'm excited when we get to that point to see what you thought. Mm-hmm. But I don't know, you want to get into this thing?
Sure.
All right. So the Meg the plot is a group of scientists exploring the Marianas Trench encounter the largest marine predator that has ever existed, the Megalodon. And it stars Jason Statham as Jonas Taylor, Bing Bing Lee as Su Yin, Rainn Wilson as Morris, Cliff Curtis as Mac, which I love Cliff Curtis and whatever he does, Winston Chow as Zhang, Shuya Sophia, Cal as Mei Ying, I think that's a little girl, Ruby Rose as Jax, Paige Kennedy as DJ, and Robert Taylor as Heller. Robert Taylor was from Longmire, and I like him a lot. I haven't seen all of the Longmire, but I've seen like a couple of the episodes of the first season. It was really good. My wife says
I've seen most of it.
Real good. Dean. It was written by Dean Georgeris, like Georgeris. Yeah, there you go. John Hober and Eric Hober from the novel by Steve Allen, the comedian. He's like, hey, I wrote a book. Before I died, I wrote a book. And directed by John Turteltaub. So now, and like I said, I mention all those names just in case some people go, oh, remember when Jax was doing this? And other people just go, it's like me and Jason were like, we just go, remember when Jason Statham did this? Remember when, Rainn Wilson did this? Like, you're not going to go, unless you're my wife, going, oh, yeah, that character. And I'm like, I don't know the character you mean, So.
I think that every time I think Statham, I think of him, what was it? What's her name? Smart?
Elizabeth Smart.
Moving.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What was that called? Something with a C. Everybody's yelling at their phone or their podcast thing. There was two of them. Not Chaos, but
I just remember him. Basically, she just like bending her over and just doing it right in front of everybody.
Yeah.
It was like, what the hell? That's like anytime I think of him, I'm thinking I just have this image of him just getting off on her, and I'm like, God dang it.
Yeah,
it's probably the worst thing possible to be remembered
keep my
for.
Heart up. Yeah. Yeah, that was it was funny. Guys, quiet. We're recording a podcast.
They don't care.
I know they don't. They're like, podcast? They're like Thunder the Barbarian when he's like, movie?
You need to get a sound effect that sounds like you're shooting again.
Yeah. And then they're quiet.
Damn it, dogs.
Like, you're a jerk. Crank and Crank
there
2.
It is.
Yeah. Sorry. I had to look it up because I knew. This was driving me nuts. And I didn't want to have to put in the corrections of the show. So at the beginning of this movie, I wrote down some like points, and we can discuss as we go, or we can just bypass this completely and go to Jaws. But the kid asking his mother to swim is a nod to Jaws. She's even wearing the similar suit as a woman in Jaws. I don't know. You probably didn't notice it because you watched Meg first and then Jaws later.
No, the only thing that I made a connection to is Pippin.
Yeah. There was
I was
Pippin,
like, well,
and
one
Pippin.
dog lived, one dog died.
Yeah.
So-
Yeah. Poor thing. Yeah, and Meg pulling the docks is a nod to Jaws when they're on the docks and they're being pulled.
Yeah.
And then
pretty much the whole damn movie was a nod to Jaws in some way, shape, or form.
Yeah,
like people's names, like just dogs' names, like it was really weird.
Yeah, the bite pattern was just like Jaws. Yeah, the Pipit was the dog in Jaws, and Pippin was the dog in Meg. Meg is killed. It's the same sound effect as when Jaws was killed, and the truck from Duel. Like they use those exact same things.
Oh, nice.
Because that's what Spielberg used, the sound from Duel for Jaws. And then they used that same sound. And I've heard that they put that into Jurassic Park somewhere, like that noise.
Nice.
That Spielberg sound guys were even like, hey, let's take that and put it here. Almost like that Wilhelm scream that you hear about. Like something like that. But just for the Spielberg guys. What I really like is that there's that cool shot. I don't know if you remember, but when I watched it, I was like, man, that's good. And there's one like that in Jaws, but it's a cool shot of a woman on a wakeboard, and the Meg is swimming underneath, and you just see how big it is, and you're just like, oh, fuck, she's right there, you know.
Yeah.
And then the end, I like the end because it ends like it's fancy. It says Finn, like it's a French film. Yeah. So those were just my notes because I was like, I got to watch this again. I'm like, all right. So I went and rented it from Redbox, and I watched it, and I was like... And the first time I saw that was in 3D at the theater. And it was really cool. That made it better in 3D because me and the wife were like, okay, it was silly, but it was better in 3D because it was just really good. It wasn't your regular, like, throwing things at you. Although that, when they puncture that rolling thing and that cork comes out at you, like that was in 3D, I was like, I ran for the doors. I was like, get down. Everybody's like, you're crazy. And hang on, which one's barking? They're all three right here. Oh, it's the other one. Sorry to get everybody's like, we don't care about your dogs. Tell your wife to stop getting dogs. So what? Do you have favorite parts in the Meg? Do you have something that you liked about the Meg? Were you the same as me, going, fucking wife? What'd you pick this for?
No, actually, I really liked the movie. Overall, I was worried that it was going to become like a Sharknado bullshit.
Right.
Fest.
And had you seen it before or not?
No.
Oh, interesting. Okay. Had your wife seen it?
Nope.
Oh, well, that's cool then. Okay.
Yeah. So when we watched it first. So we didn't actually get the Pippin connection until we watched Jaws. And
right.
we were like, oh, okay. And that was like the thing that we, and of course, if there were things that were more verbal, we probably would have gotten the cues, but like, need a bigger boat, things like that.
Right.
If they, things like that would have been more prevalent, but it really wasn't. But no, I was expecting it, like all of it to just be
like
utter
cheesy.
crap.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then I was like, wait, that makes sense. They're like scientifically, that makes sense.
Yeah, the warm and cold water and whatever. Yeah.
Just everything made sense, and we're like, what the hell? But then all of a sudden, when they said the girl got punctured, and they were talking about her, like it didn't hit her liver or whatever like that. And my wife turns around and goes, the fucking liver's on the other side, like that. And she goes, they get all the rest of the science right, but that one fucking thing, they don't know the anatomy of the human fucking body. And I was like, whoa. All right.
You're like, calm down. Okay. Yeah.
So but both of us, our favorite throughout the whole thing, our favorite thing is the little girl, where she kept calling him crazy. And it was just, the girl was adorable. The little girl made the show.
Yeah, she was a real good actress, and just worked well with him and her mother. Like all that worked well. It was that stuff where people make fun of but I like it when they're like, they go to get somebody, say like Rambo 2, where he's building houses or whatever, or building whatever he's building, a church, and the colonel has to go there and be like, we need you. And he's like, no, fuck that. And, it's like, okay, he's trying to live a life now, and you're bringing him back in. And so it's all Colonel Troutman's fault.
Yes.
That he's fucked up as he is. But it's like, I like that they go there, and he's just like drinking beer, like that's like a life. Like he's just like drinking beer, sitting down, like, you know, swimming every once in a while, or just hanging out at that restaurant. And then he's like, oh, and then when they're like, and the thing that's cool that I liked was the wife and him. The thing of that, like they're divorced, but they're like, your wife's down there, and he goes all the way down there and opens the thing, gets in there, and she goes, is this so you could tell me I told you so? And he's like, yeah, pretty much. And it's like, oh, great. So, yeah, it was cool because they didn't hate each other. They were just like, you know. But, yeah, that was cool. And the little guy from Heroes was in there. That was cool. Those two guys were cool.
Yeah, that was pretty much like the first thing when we saw him. Like, my wife was just like, Hero!
Yeah.
And, yeah, well, of course, because you watch him in Heroes, but he was also in Hawaii Five-0 for quite a while.
Was he?
Yeah, he's the guy that the coroner.
Oh, cool. Okay. Because if you think about it, like everybody, you watch Hawaii Five-0. I don't watch the new Hawaii Five-0, but it seems like everybody's good looking. And if you look at the old Hawaii Five-0, there's that kind of bigger guy that was like working in the office. So every once, they all wore suits, and every once in a while he'd go and, there were like two overweight guys that were basically Hawaiian guys that are just Hawaiian guys. And now it's like, okay, we all got to look like Scott Conn and, but yeah. And did you know some of my facts here is Jason Statham was a member of Britain's national swimming squad. And he competed for England in the 1990 Commonwealth Games in the 10-meter, 3-meter, and 1-meter diving competitions.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So it's like, oh, we need you to do this water thing. Okay, I'll do it. And so he does most of his stunts.
That's awesome.
And then that Li Bingbing's commitment to green and charitable causes has earned her recognition as the most influential global ambassador from the World Wildlife Fund.
Oh, wow.
So that's cool. That was the main girl. Yeah. And then when Rainn Wilson told his son that he was going to be in this film titled The Meg, the young man immediately retrieved his megalodon tooth, which had been gifted by his grandmother. So he comes in, Dad, look, cool. And this is just a little whatever, but as a youngster, Ruby Rose eagerly studied and learned everything she could about megalodons. Like she was big into them when she was younger.
That's weird.
Cliff Curtis, who comes from the Maori culture, was raised on stories about sharks and even has body art of shark representations. Because he's, Maori warrior or whatever. Yeah. That movie, did you ever see that movie called what's it called? Only the Warriors? No. Anyway. See, I fucked that up too, and everybody's yelling at me now. Brant is like, you fucking idiot. But anyway.
It was after a while, they're going to start thinking that we do this on purpose just to get them all like
get them all riled up.
Yelling at us.
Yeah, it's like, remember when, I got to tell you about this guy in a second, but yeah, it'll be like, remember when Oliver Stone directed Jaws? Oh, such a great director. And it's like, no, you fucking idiots. Prior to becoming an actor, Robert Taylor, who we talked about from Longmire, worked many years at sea in the oil rigs and on ships off the coast of Australia and Indonesia, as well as in the Persian Gulf and North Sea. He was also an avid surfer.
Nice.
Rainn Wilson's character Morris is introduced emerging from a helicopter. It was the first time the actor had traveled in one, which is weird. Like you would think as an actor, maybe you'd be in more helicopters, but maybe not. Yeah. And then this one I put on here for you. There's two more, but one of the humpback whales is named Gracie. This is the same name as the female humpback in Star Trek IV, The Voyage Home.
Oh, awesome.
Yeah.
That's cool.
But then one was named Gracie and one was Lucy, and so they were saying it might have been for George and Gracie and Lucille Ball. But I like that one, that Star Trek IV. George Clooney was once attached to be the main guy, which would have been interesting. But this thing has been, since they put out that book, I remember when book came out in like 97 or 95 or younger or earlier. And Joe was like, oh, I read the book. It's really good. And I was like, oh, okay. And then at that time, they were going to make the movie, and then they never did. So it kept getting pushed and pushed. And then finally it was like, oh, okay, cool.
Yeah.
So now they did, but yeah, for years, sometimes those things you just wonder, like, oh, it must suck. Like, you really want this to just be made and come out, and then either when it does, it's been changed so much that it's not even what you imagined when you first thought of it or whatever.
Well, and that's what's funny about it is, like now Neil Gaiman. It's been years since like some of his books have been, when they were first published, and then back, 25 years ago,
Yeah.
when he was writing the Sandman series.
Yeah.
Right? So all of a sudden, in the past, like so many years, like in the past 5 years, all of a sudden there's, American Gods TV show from
Yeah.
his book. There's the Good Omens that just came out. That's one of his books there too.
Yeah.
Right. And then they just announced a Sandman series on Netflix.
Oh, wow.
Right.
Yeah.
But the thing is that for every one of the, like, I think, or at least I know for sure, the Good Omens and for the Sandman, he's one of the showrunners. So he gets to make sure they do it right.
Yeah.
Like he has full control, like on how this runs. And I'm like, oh, that's got to be amazing. And not just handing off your babies and then seeing how they fuck it up.
Yeah, that's what was good with Harry Potter was that they had her help with the script, so they could be like, "Here's the script," and she could be like, "No, let's change this or change that." So, but yeah, it's cool when you get the people that have done it that can actually guide it to where they want or know what they want. But now. We'll get into Jaws. Let me read everything about what it's about, and let's see if Chip even liked it, because it's a 1975 movie. Jaws from 1975. The plot is when a killer shark unleashes chaos on a beach community, it's up to a local sheriff, a marine biologist, and an old seafarer to hunt the beast down. Stars Roy Scheider as Brody, Robert Shaw as Quint, Richard Dreyfuss as Hooper, Lorraine Gary as... That might be Gray. I think my thing might have tried to fix it. Anyway, as Ellen Brody. Sorry about that. Again, everybody, you fucker. And Murray Hamilton as Vaughn. Written by Carl Gottlieb and Peter Benchley from the novel by Peter Benchley. And it's directed by Steven Spielberg, in case none of you knew. And I think Chip, like I was telling somebody, and they go, is he like the only one that has not seen Jaws? Him and his wife, are they the only people on Earth? And I was like, no, there's babies that were just born. Yep. But no, what was funny on a quick thing that I did put down that I didn't realize, and then we'll get to the beginning of the movie, but I didn't realize until recently, and I don't know why I didn't, and I might have figured it out, but after watching Jaws, rewatching The Golden Girls, I'm like, why does this guy look familiar? Like Blanche's father. I go, he looks familiar. What is he in? And I look at and I'm like, duh, he's fucking Jaws. He's the mayor in Jaws. I go, holy shit. And I write Joe Merle, oh my God, I just realized. He's like, yeah, we used to watch that all the time. I said, yeah, but we rewatch it, and I didn't even think that's why he looks familiar,
Nice.
Or I might have. I just forgot about it. So I was like, oh yeah, because he's thinner and he's older and all that stuff. But what did you guys think of this movie?
We liked it. It was, I don't know. For me, it was way better than I thought it was going to be.
Cool.
I, for some reason, it was. I think it was kind of skewed in my head from just what I had seen, and then so many different references to it from so many different movies and stuff like that. That people talking about it, whatever.
Yeah.
When you're linking comedy stuff like Kevin Smith type dialogue and stuff like that because of them talking about it or using the characters' names as the characters' names, and you make those links and it kind of throws it off.
Or
you're not expecting
the chasing Amy scene when they're around and he said, I want it to look just like Jaws, like in the boat, like I want it red, and I want them talking about their scars from eating pussy or whatever, having sex, and they're doing all that, and you're like, oh, that's a nod to Jaws, but you were like, I don't know really. Yeah.
Yep. And that's the thing is that, when you know those links, but then you actually see the movie and you see it for what it is. And it wasn't, I mean, of course, back then for them to have the mayor that just wouldn't fucking listen.
Yeah.
and then shit goes sideways
Yeah.
and everything. And you're like, okay, that's very much an 80s type of thing that kept carrying on from the 70s into the 80s.
Yeah.
Where it was always something stupid like that. And that's just how they did things.
Yeah.
But
It's like Poltergeist. You didn't move, you moved the headstones, you didn't move the bodies. It's yeah.
But so, but for me, I'm making these other connections like Roy Schreiber, I'm thinking of Blue Thunder,
Yeah.
so I'm like, okay, I fucking love him,
Yeah. Yeah.
period. Dreyfus, the one thing that I told my wife right away was I've always loved Richard Dreyfuss's laugh,
Yeah.
period.
Yeah.
So when he laughs in Jaws or whatever, I'm just like, God, I love him so much.
It's infectious, yeah.
And it's stupid that it's just his laugh. But, but the faces that he gets, the way he reacts to things are amazing. What I didn't like was just Quint. It was hard to understand what he was saying.
Oh, with his too much Boston for you?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it was like kind of annoying to me where I was like, okay, this is a little much. But when it got to the scene where he's talking about
the Indianapolis,
the
best
when
speech
that happened,
in
I was
movie
just sitting there
history.
going, holy crap. I was like, that's amazing. For me, what he said to me is on par with True Romance with him,
Yeah,
with
the interrogation with Dennis Hopper. Yeah.
Yeah. That and the sit down with De Niro and Pacino in Heat.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like it had that impact where I was just sitting here and I was just immersed in it. I was just lost in it.
Yeah.
So that was amazing. I don't think there's anything else that could compare to him doing that.
Yeah, I think when I get to it later on the facts, like who could have been Quint, it's like, no, he's like that's when I first saw him, and I was like, oh, I love Robert Shaw. Then I saw like James Bond from Russia with Love, and I'm like, oh, he's a bad guy. Oh, and he's younger, and that's cool. And then I saw Taking Pelham 1, 2, 3, and you're like, oh, he's a good bad guy. But yeah, for that dialogue, that's like the best in movie history, the best speech, the best whatever line, whatever you want to call it, even though it's big. When we were doing our John Milius episode, I had copied down, we had talked about like scenes that he had written, and he wrote this is a 44 Magnum, blow your head clean off, you got to ask yourself, do you feel lucky? He gave that whole speech. He wrote the smell of napalm in the morning, smells like victory, like he wrote that whole thing. And he didn't write the whole Jaws thing, but they wrote the Jaws speech. Then he threw it to John Milius. John Milius wrote it. Then he threw it to Robert Shaw, and Robert Shaw was a playwright, and Robert Shaw's like, oh, hang on. And he went through and made it to where it would work better for him, and that's what you get in the movie, and it's like awesome. And yeah, his just speech, like doll's eyes, like, oh, so good. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I basically went back and I looked at the quotes of Jaws just so that I could read what he said to myself, because it was so hard kind of to understand him.
Well, because you're so into it, like me, like you know it, like after you see it a lot.
Yeah.
Like I said, like as you haven't listened to, you're going to be listening to the recent episodes, but on that last episode, I talk about how I watched Jaws again for this episode, and I said, I can't believe that I don't watch Jaws every fucking day. Like, it's a fucking solid, good movie, and every time you watch it, you go, God damn, this is good. And that speech just gets you every time, and even though you know it, it's just, it's just so good. It explains that whole story. And then on Amazon, for anybody on Amazon Prime, there's not the cheesy Indianapolis movie with Nicolas Cage, but there's a documentary about the USS Indianapolis. And it talks to the survivors and about how they were in the water and what happened, and like how, they would have people screaming and they'd want them to shut up, and what, just craziness. And then how that captain got in trouble because you're supposed to go down with your ship, like all this stuff, and then they said that it was his fault, and then finally years later they gave him a commendation, like finally, but it was like, but he's already dead, like he was depressed for a long time because, he got blamed for all that. But anyway, it was really good. So check that documentary out. But yes, I have some points of the movie that I wrote down. So Alex Kintner should have come in from swimming when his mom said, like, instead of go, Mom, can I go back at? No, I would, but she did say, okay, go ahead. Just, but did you notice, that's Some Bad Hat, Harry?
Yep.
That's from, yeah.
Yeah,
so,
me and my wife looked right at each other right when it happened, because for the longest time, I didn't know what that was from.
Yeah. And then
she looked it up, and she said that it was from Jaws, and I was like, oh, okay. So then when we're watching it, all of a sudden he turns and says that to him. I'm sorry, but at that point in time, I'm just looking, and I'm like, wow, he's got awesome man boobs.
Yeah, that old man. Yeah.
I was just like,
and if you remember the beginning or ending of House, I think it was always at the end, was that old man sitting next to him has that red and white hat, like he's got the same hat and everything. It's funny. Mm-hmm. But yeah, that was, and then that push in but pull out, and then as people walk by, it goes closer and closer to him because he's just watching for a shark. It's like really cool. Yeah. I put Quint's intro is great. The nails on the chalkboard. Yep. Everybody's like, what? And you're like, oh, that's a fucking great introduction to this guy. And then I love then when Brody's wife, like, she's like, the kids are just playing on the boat. You got it for him for his birthday. It's fine. And then she's like, what's that? And she looks at the book and sees all the blood and all the bites and stuff from the sharks. And she's like, get out of the boat right now. Didn't you hear your dad?
It showed that bite, that perfect bite by the shark into the side of a boat.
Yeah. And she's like, didn't you hear your dad? Get out of the boat.
And he doesn't realize that that's why she, he's like looking and going, what? What's going on? Like, you just said.
Yeah, he's so into the book and doesn't get it. And then when Hooper asks to see the body, and the guy just pulls out like a little tray. He's like a little a little bucket, and then he goes through and he's like, okay. So that's what I loved, because it's funny and creepy.
Dreyfuss,
yeah,
it being Richard Dreyfuss, when he did that and he looked at it, and he had to actually psych himself up. Mm-hmm. Like when he's looking at it, he's like, okay, and then he kind of just goes in. I was like, oh, that is cool, because it's not like he's just like, he does this every day.
Yeah.
And he studies the shark. He's not really studying.
Yeah, he doesn't look at the aftermath of the bodies. Yeah. No, that was neat. And I love the scene with Brody's son imitating him. Mm-hmm. And on one of the facts, it was that the kid was doing that, like off camera, like while they were just doing it in between takes. Mm-hmm. And Spielberg's like, oh, I like that. Redo that. Like, do that exact same thing. So then they just redid it. That's why it's so, so great with him moving his fingers and doing it, and the kids doing the same thing. And so great. Yep. And then I love that whole dinner scene. Then when Hooper shows up, and Hooper takes the wine and like pours it into the beer, like it mixes everything. And he's just like, oh, you eating this? And he takes his food and he starts eating it. And he's like, yeah, so we're not supposed to, but yeah, we should go out there. And it's like, okay. So yeah, just that whole, them working together and them now bonding, like them becoming, like Roy Scheider starts smiling, like, okay, we're in this now. Yeah. And then the Ben Gardner scene is great. Did you like that? Did that scare you? The Ben Gardner, when they go to look at his boat, they see his boat. Oh, that's Ben Gardner's boat. And then he dives down, and there's a hole in the boat. And then you're like, and then all of a sudden the head shows up, or the whole body, the face there, and you're like, and he goes, and he runs. And
I think that was the only time throughout the whole movie that both me and my wife jumped.
Yeah.
Was that like the rest of it we were prepared for, we knew it was coming, all that's fine, but that was the one time we actually jumped.
No, that was and that was where they had done the whole movie, and they go, we need an extra scene. So they went to this little, they went to one of their tanks and they filmed that scene, and it worked to make, a good scare that they threw in for like an extra little filming day. So nice. It's pretty cool. And then Peter Benchley, did you see him? I don't know if you looked up the trivia, but Peter Benchley, the author of the Jaws book, is the interviewer that's on the beach with the microphone that's talking to people. Yeah.
Nice.
So that's Peter Benchley. the kids with a fin at gunpoint. I like that when they're like shark, and then when the kids come up, everybody's there with the guns pointing at them.
Yeah. And then of course pointing like he made me do it.
Yeah. And then so creepy, the shark in the pond, and you see it under the water. Like I said, just like the wakeboard scene from Meg, but it's that same thing where all of a sudden you see the shark going under the water, like, and it's just creepy, and you're like, oof.
Yeah.
And then I put Quinn as the best, and I love the fishing line scene when all of a sudden, zzz, and it goes. And then it keeps going, and then he's like, putting water on it. Like that's where you learn, like that's because then it'll burn out, whatever. Yeah. And then him and Hooper, where Hooper kind of has been on boats and knows things, and Roy Scheider, like I have no idea, I'm a land. He doesn't like water, and he's just a land person, and so all that stuff is great. But that fishing,
I do love that when the line starts ticking. Everybody else is still talking and doing their own things, and he's still just kind of like,
he knows,
and he's looking around, and like he's prepping everything, moving everything.
He's putting the thing in the bucket.
Nobody knows he's doing it.
Locking himself in, putting it in the bucket. All that stuff. Yeah, so great. And then I'm sure you noticed it, but the Walter Matthau imitation by Richard Dreyfuss, where he's driving the boat when he goes, hurry up, reverse it, turn around. And he goes, I'm doing what I can. I can't even think of Walter Matthau now, but he does this Walter Matthau imitation, like, basically yelling at, saying, you son of a bitch. But anyway, it was great. I'll think of the scene and I'll let you know. But it's when he's up on the top and he's driving the boat.
Well, I remember the actual, but I think I heard him do it, and I wasn't realizing that's who he was acting
right.
like.
Yeah, because he says it in a different voice than his, and I'm like, I go, Chip's going to get that Walter Matthau. That's the first thing Chip's going to come out of his mouth is, Walter Matthau.
No. Now I want to watch that scene again just to take that in.
And then them bonding on the boat, like we said, that scene where they're all around and they're talking about, here's a bite that I got. Oh, what's that from? And then he doesn't want to talk about the Indianapolis.
Yeah.
And then Roy Scheider's like, and you can see that Richard Dreyfuss is like, oh, you were on the Indianapolis. Okay. And then Roy Scheider's like, what's that? What's, like innocently, like what's going? And then he tells this fucking heavy duty story and you're like, oof. And then you're like,
I do love that the camera goes back and forth between their faces, and you see how they're like, oh my god, and they don't want to interrupt him.
Yeah. And then when they're done though, then they're drinking and they're singing, and then the boat starts, then the shark starts hitting the boat. Oh, so good. And like I put here, the Indianapolis speech, the best in movie history, best of anything. 3 barrels, I love that. Like I've always talked about, like the 2 barrels. And then put a 3rd barrel, and it gets pulled down, and then comes up later, and they're like, "Oh, good."
Yeah.
And then
I love how he kept saying, none of them could take 3 barrels. None of them could take 3 barrels, and all of a sudden he disappears. It's like, oh damn! He looks around. It's just
yeah. Oh, so great. And then the thing with when they're when they're tying off the lines, and Richard Dreyfuss's legs get caught on the thing. And then he's like, and then he has to get out. Anyway, it's this
of
real
course,
cool
right when that
moment.
happens, both me and my wife are like, ow.
Yeah.
How, like you stiffen up. Like, oh, God.
Yeah, you're like, oh, all that strength. And then the shark cage where there was a real shark, like they really did that, and that shark got caught in there. And they were like, oh, that's good footage. Let's use that for this thing. Mm-hmm. So originally, like Hooper was supposed to die in that cage, like get attacked by a shark. But then they had him like escape and then, and then kind of hid and then came up later. He was like, is it all okay? Now I'll come up and I'll be the hero. And you hate when Quint dies because you liked him. He told that speech. Yeah. You like his character. He's just so good, even though Chip couldn't understand him. You're just like, man, I like this guy. And then when
that's the thing though, is that when he dies, though, when it happens, you're like, this is kind of his destiny.
That's what I was going to say. Yeah, it's like he's always been, his revenge has always been against all sharks, as you see in his little boathouse there, where he's got all the shark jaws all over the place, and you know that's just what he's been after, is just like killing sharks. And so when he does get, you go, okay, that was, and that he's stabbing it with that machete, trying to kill it even right there. Like he's like, take that, you son of a bitch. And then of course I put smile, you son of a bitch, because that was that end. And that was just so good because even though they cut to it, but I don't think people like then, because then it wasn't like now where you go, oh, they're going to blow up the tank, of course. But then it was like you would see him chewing on and you'd go, oh, my God, what's going to happen? They're sinking into the water. They're going to be killed. And then he shoots the tank and you go, oh, my God, yes, of course, duh. Mm-hmm. But that was like the first blockbuster. Like now they do it all the time where you go, oh, yeah, I know what's going to happen.
Yeah. So. Well, and my thing is because of the time when this movie came out, when he shot the tank and said that, mm-hmm. I was like, oh, this is the beginning of the one-liners.
Yeah.
That this started it in the blockbuster movies. That is thanks to, Spielberg. Now it's all going to be one-liners from here on out because of the smile.
Yeah, you get Arnold but yeah, I didn't even think of that, where it might be like the Arnold and the Stallones and all that, where, it's like, oh, he said this and that worked out. And I haven't seen, I remember back in the day I saw Jaws 2, Jaws 3. I never saw Jaws 4, which I heard is horrible, but I still want to see it. It's Mario Van Peebles and Michael Caine. So, which is funny, Michael Caine, because it sounds like you're saying Michael Caine in Michael Caine's accent, which I always love. Not cocaine. I just love talking like Michael Caine. It's like whenever Kevin Smith tries to imitate Michael Caine, he says the size of a tangerine, like from Batman Begins or Batman Dark Knight Returns. Dark Knight. Anyway, some of the facts is I said Blanche's father is Murray Hamilton from Golden Girls, and at one point it was going to be Charlton Heston as Brody, John Voight as Hooper, and Lee Marvin as Quint.
Weird.
Yeah. Would have been very weird.
That's crazy.
And then some other facts that I have here. The book was almost not going to be called Jaws. They were going to call it the guy was going to call it The Stillness in the Water, The Silence of the Deep, Leviathan Rising, and Jaws of Death. And then they chose to go with Jaws. Steven Spielberg got the job because of what he did on Duel and Sugarland Express, which I really want to do an episode on Sugarland Express, but I don't think anybody's seen Sugarland Express, but I love that movie. It's got the asshole from Die Hard and Die Hard 2 in it, the newscaster. Mm-hmm. It's got him in it. He plays the main character.
Dickless.
Do it?
Dickless.
Yeah, Dickless, yeah. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that guy too. Yeah, same one. Yeah, exactly. How dare I forget about Ghostbusters? And the shark just didn't work, and it takes 21 minutes into the 2-hour film before you see the shark. And the reason, and I'm telling you more of this, I think everybody else knows all the Jaws fucking trivia, but the shark didn't work, and that's what makes the movie work better. Because if the shark would have worked, he would have probably used it more. And it wouldn't have been as intense as it was. But without the shark, it's almost, it makes it more suspenseful because all you see is either the fin or, underneath.
Yeah, that's awesome.
He had to create inventive ways like Quint's yellow barrels to shoot around the non-functional, sorry. Took a very long time to make. It was supposed to be a 65-day shoot, but it ballooned to 159 days. Damn. Because of the shark and because the salt water would mess up the shark.
Oh, nice.
And they didn't realize they try it in regular water and then they put it in salt water and they're like, wait a minute. And Amity Island was actually Martha's Vineyard, in case you didn't know that. The shark weighed more than a ton, 1.2 tons, and measured 25 feet long. And what's funny is Kevin Smith being a movie person and stuff, whenever somebody explains to him the length of something or how big something is, he always equates it to his favorite movie, Jaws. So he's like, well, Jaws was 25 feet. So you're saying it was 2 Jawses? It's like, yeah, 50 feet away.
That's awesome.
And Spielberg took inspiration from his legal counsel. So the director nicknamed the shark Bruce after his lawyer, Bruce Raymer, who also currently represents other celebrities, Demi Moore, Ben Stiller, and Clint Eastwood.
Nice.
So that's why, like, Finding Nemo was a nod to Jaws, with Bruce the shark was a nod to Jaws because of Bruce. Yeah.
Nice.
Some good old-fashioned elbow grease helped create the opening scene. So that girl in the beginning, Susan Backline's legs were pulled by crew members back and forth from the shoreline. And Spielberg told the crew not to let her know where, which way they were going to yank her. And they just yanked her all over. And makes it really cool. And then...
honestly, though, that was the part that I was kind of iffy about.
Because it going back and forth and not like just pulling her under or just biting something off and leaving.
Because the actual shark would not do that.
Right. Yeah. Part of me thinks that, but still, it's a good scene. But yeah. And then I don't know if you realize this, but I remember I own 1941. But Spielberg went on to spoof his own opening scene from Jaws in the 1979 World War II comedy 1941. The scene features that same actress once again taking a skinny dip at the beach, but instead of being attacked by a shark, she's scooped up by a passing Japanese submarine.
Nice.
Yeah. And then some eavesdropping got Roy Scheider the lead. So he was, Scheider was instantly enthralled he heard this story about that the shark leaps out of the water and onto Quint's boat. And Scheider was enthralled and asked Spielberg if he could be in the film. Spielberg loved Scheider from his role in The French Connection and later offered the actor the part.
Nice.
So it helps to eavesdrop sometimes.
Yeah.
And Richard Dreyfuss wasn't the first choice for Hooper. Also, other than John Voight, it was Timothy Bottoms, Jeff Bridges. When none of them would commit to the role, Spielberg's friend George Lucas suggested Richard Dreyfuss, whom Lucas had directed in American Graffiti. Dreyfuss would later accept the part because he thought he was terrible in the title role of the film The Apprenticeship of Duddy Kravitz a year earlier. So he had done this movie and it didn't do well. And he was like, I don't know. And then also he was like, I don't know about that. And he kind of read it. And then there was a scene in there while they were talking to him, he had this plastic cup and he crushes it. And they go, yeah, we should have things like that in there. And then they start writing like these comedy moments for him. And he's like, oh, okay, cool. So
nice.
It really worked out.
I do have one thing to say.
Okay.
The fact that Richard Dreyfuss is in this movie, Spielberg did this movie.
Yeah.
And in the background, there's two spots where you see what look like UFOs in the movie.
Interesting. Really?
Yes. And so my wife was like, did you see that? I go, yeah, I think I did. And we rewound it. And it shows in two different scenes what looks like some little like flash of light that kind of flies around in the background. And it's not like a trick of
I saw that. Right. I saw that one when they film at night and it's like a falling star or something that goes by.
It looks like that, but there's another one.
Right.
That happens in a different scene that's like kind of almost right in front of that, where they kind of do it from different camera, but it's not like they're rolling the same thing. It was two totally different times, and you see two things flying by, and you're like, wait a second, that's a little freaky. And then I'm like, well, maybe Spielberg saw that during editing. It was like Close Encounters of the Third Kind.
Yeah, let me write this. Yeah. No, that's I have to be honest, I beg to differ. I think it was Falling Stars. Not that I don't believe in aliens. I know. Chip shaking his head no. You could be right. But fucking Close Encounters of the Third Kind. Have you seen that one? Did you see that movie? Okay. Oh, yeah. Like, oh, yeah, I've seen that. But you haven't seen Jaws, but you've seen that. Well, excuse me for not knowing.
No, I think I was with you when I bought the actual collector's edition.
I think you were, yeah. And then Robert Shaw wasn't the first choice to play Quint. So like I said, Lee Marvin, but also Sterling Hayden were the first and second choices to play Quint. And both turned Spielberg down. And producers Zanuck and Brown recommended English actor Robert Shaw, whom they had previously worked with in 73's The Sting, with Robert Redford. Yeah. And then this was cool. I didn't know this, but local Martha's Vineyard fisherman was the real Quint. And he's in the movie. I'm taking a picture now to send you. He's in the movie, and he's Ben Gardner. He plays Ben Gardner, but he's the guy that they got the idea of Quint from.
Mm-hmm.
And there, I send it to you. So he was the real Quint. It says Shaw based his performance of Quint on Martha's Vineyard's native and fisherman Craig Kingsbury, a non-actor who appears in the film as Ben Gardner. Kingsbury helped Shaw with his accent and allegedly told Shaw old sea stories that the actor incorporated into his improvised dialogue as Quint.
Nice.
And Gregory Peck forced a scene to be cut from the movie because they were going to have where Quint was originally introduced by causing a big scene at the movie theater.
Mm-hmm.
And in the movie, they're watching Moby Dick, and he causes this big scene. But Gregory Peck owned the rights to Moby Dick, and he didn't want them to use it. So they had to cut the scene and introduce him. But that's a better introduction with him scratching on the chalkboard.
Yep.
And the book was very different from the movie, where Brody's wife cheats on him with Hooper. She ends up
weird.
sleeping with Hooper, and it's a whole. And then there's it's a subplot where Hooper has an affair with Cheap Brody's wife, which was carted over from the book. Another detail left out of the movie from the book was the Mayor Vaughn was under pressure from the mafia, not local business owners, to keep Amy's beaches open because of their real estate investments on the island.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And then I told you about Steven Spielberg added the offline thing of him and the kid.
Mm-hmm.
And also another iconic moment was also a spontaneous one. Brody's famous "You're Gonna Need a Bigger Boat" line was entirely improvised by Scheider on the day of shooting.
Nice.
Yeah. And then
Man goes into cage goes into water.
Right.
Sharks in the water.
Sharks in the water. Salsa shark. And then Robert Shaw, I told you, he spruced up that speech.
Yeah.
So good. The real shark footage was shown. I told you that one. And despite all the bloody shark attacks, the movie's rated PG. Yeah, how was your wife with the blood and everything? She was okay because it was like blood after the fact. It wasn't like chomping on people.
Yeah.
Because a little story about Chip and his wife for a second, because Quentin Tarantino's movie's coming out tomorrow. So excited. But when you guys hear this, you'll be like, came out a week ago, you idiot. But he takes his wife and they go to see Django Unchained. And everybody probably knows Django Unchained. The beginning of Django Unchained, my favorite guy, James Russo, not Jim, is it James? Anyway, I'm sorry. Again, another correction. The guy from Beverly Hills Cop, who I love, who was his friend in Beverly Hills Cop. They're bonds. They're bear bonds, man. What do you mean? He's on a horse, and all of a sudden, Christoph Waltz shoots the horse in the head and blows its head like completely, like a big hole open, and the horse just drops. And then he's stuck under his horse, or maybe kills him too. And Chip's like, yeah, my wife was like checked out of the movie like right away. And he's like, but we're in the theater. What are we going to do? And so now they probably can't go see any Quentin Tarantino movies anymore because she's like, no.
Yep.
But yeah, that would suck when you go, I don't know what it's going to be. And then all of a sudden, oh my God, wait a minute, there's a lot of blood in here. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Good thing is she loves sharks and she watches, all the Shark Week stuff and everything like that. And so, she sees some things that, they kind of warn you before you watch it type stuff. So she's prepared. But for something like that, she did really well.
Well, and that's what
the reason why she really wanted to see Jaws, though, honestly, is because she knew that the writer of Jaws, ever since Jaws caused the hysteria of everybody being afraid of sharks and and all that, and like started hunting sharks and everything, thinking that they were like just basically hunting humans when they weren't.
Stop doing what you do. Stop killing because you want to eat. Yeah.
Yeah. So ever since then, the actual writer of the book made it his life's mission to do shark conservation.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So she's completely respects the creator of Jaws, basically. And so, so she really wanted to see it because of that.
Yeah. That's awesome. The poster for the film reads that the movie may be too intense for younger children. So yeah, maybe. And this is something that you and I know, but it says the PG-13 wasn't created until after Spielberg's Indiana Jones and Temple of Doom to change the system in 1984. And again, I know that I'm old, but it seems like just the other day that I heard on the news that a little girl passed out or freaked out, and that's when they changed to PG-13 because she was 12 or something. And it's like holy shit, because it was the heart scene when he pulls out his heart, and she was just like, but forget the heart scene. It's the thing of being lowered into some really hot lava. Like, I get hot just watching that scene. I'm like, get me out of here. Like, even as her, that's one where I call bullshit when she's being lowered, and she's pretty low. You know that you're already burned, like and she's just like, help, help.
Don't you think it would have been enough for Raiders, where the melted faces? Wouldn't that be enough to make them go, wait a second, maybe we should change some stuff?
That is true. I would think maybe, but my favorite movie of all time, Raiders of the Lost Ark. But I think, I don't know. Yeah, I was going to say, but maybe you could see that it's a model. But yeah, as a kid, you'd be like, well, it's like you and I said, although it was rated R, and I'm sorry that I've told this story 50 billion times, the dog bursting open from the thing, like, but that was rated R. I shouldn't have been watching that movie, but my parents were like, it's cool. And I'm like, okay. And we're sitting there watching a Betamax, and all of a sudden I'm like, I got to leave. I don't like, I'm very uncomfortable. And I was thinking about it recently too. I think that they did say, I was like, oh, and they saw that it was disturbing, and they were like, maybe you should go, because they hadn't seen it. So they were like, maybe go in the other room. I'm like, okay. But it's a fucking great movie. Have you seen The Thing? You've seen The Thing, right?
Yeah.
You're like, no. I'm like, what? No, he's seen it.
I saw it a long time ago when it was on cable, but I barely remember.
Oh, so good. And Spielberg didn't direct the final scene because he was busy on post-production for another movie. Or pre-production. And so somebody else shot that exploding shark. Second unit shot it.
Oh, okay.
And the poster image came about by chance of, the shark coming up to the swimmer. It was the film's iconic poster image designed by artist Roger Castell for the paperback edition of Benchy's book. Castell modeled the image of the massive shark emerging from the bottom of the frame after a great white shark diorama at the American Museum of Natural History. The female swimmer at the top was actually a model that Castell was sketching at his studio for an ad in Good Housekeeping. He asked her to stay an extra half hour and had her pose on the stool like she was swimming, and then he drew that, and it's like, It's an amazing poster. And then, of course, Jaws was huge, released in more than 400 theaters in the United States, first movie to gross over $100 million at the box office. It was the highest grossing movie of all time until Star Wars was released 2 years later. Spielberg included a nod to his previous film. That was the thing of the duel. The monster sound when the shark dies is the same as Duel. It originally ended just like Moby Dick, but then they decided to put in that foreshadowing of the, be careful with that tank, it's going to explode, and then the thing eating the tank. And the main theme music, in case you want to play it, is easy to play. The sole music notes played for composer John Williams' Jaws theme are E and F. Jaws marked the second time Williams worked with Spielberg after his film The Sugarland Express, and Williams has composed the music for every Spielberg movie since, with the exception of 1985's The Color Purple and 2015's Bridge of Spies.
Nice.
So, well, I'm glad that you enjoyed it, because I was worried on the show, like I said, with Jason, that you'll hear. I'm sorry to retell everybody. This is why I've told you, like, if you guys listen to the show, it'd be better, so I don't have to recap or repeat myself. He doesn't like old movies. He was born in 1978, and he's like, fuck black and white, fuck old movies, fuck foreign films. I'm like, okay. I'm like, I'm gonna fight you. I go, I'm gonna turn this recording off, kick your ass. But that's, you're entitled to that. So I was worried.
4 years difference.
I was worried. No, I know, but people are different. I mean, I was born in 1971, but I watch all kinds of movies, as you could tell by that recent one, Italian film that I read and watched, and it was fun. Yeah. But it's a thing of it's just like my wife, where she's like, I don't want to that looks too old to me, or the acting looks stiff, kind of like you and I talked about. Like, you're that way with the black and white films. Like, you're like, it's a little, the acting's like off because it's too, like, you say your lines, I'll say mine, instead of like, you know. But yeah, that's why I was kind of thinking like, oh, what if Chip comes on and he's like, oh my God, Jaws was horrible. Like, I hated it. And I was like, uh-oh, okay, I'm prepared. But I'm glad that you liked it, because I really enjoy it. Joe and I at one point Joe loves Close Encounters of the Third Time, Joe Weedman, and I love Jaws. And Joe was like, you like Jaws better than Close Encounters? And I'm like, well, that's a tough one. I go, yeah, I think so. But then whenever I watch Close Encounters, I go, God damn, this is good too. So it's a tough thing.
I understand why, though, because as much as I like watching Close Encounters, you cannot watch it over and over and over again.
That is true.
Because it drags ass.
That
like
is
on
true.
some spots it is so long and you're just like, oh my God.
Yeah.
But with Jaws, you could do it. You could watch it once a week.
Yeah.
Every week.
Yeah.
For the rest of your life, and you'll be fine. Try and do that with Close Encounters, and you'll eventually be throwing it away.
Very true. Very true. Yeah. Yeah. It's a good point. Anyway, well, thank you for being on the show. I don't want to keep you too long or whatever, and don't want to make our shows too long. So, but you have anything to say about the Meg? And by the way, I like the Meg. I really liked it in 3D. I got it from Redbox and I watched it, and it was okay. It is fun, but you know. So I'm sorry for my thing. Like I've said, I think I told you off camera before we started recording, was I feel bad because I did Remo Williams on the last show, and this show I'm doing the Meg and Jaws. Remo Williams is good. I grew up with it, so I like doing that. But I want to do better films, like good films. And so whenever I put these out, I kind of feel like somebody will go, oh, the Meg? Oh, you know. Or Remo Williams, I've never heard of it, and no thanks. You know, Tremors, okay, you know. And pick and choose what they want to listen to. So that's where I was just like, I don't know. But yeah,
as far as the Meg goes, I mean, I honestly, it wasn't Sharknado.
Right.
That's what I really went in thinking it was going to be, that they showed like whatever scenes they needed to get you to sit your ass in the theater to watch it.
Yeah.
And the rest was going to be utter, complete crap. And it wasn't. I was like, wow, this is actually well made. Everything was done right. Like the explanation as far as the science of it was great. I was like, huh, okay.
Well,
like, this works.
And the little moments that they put in that were funny, of like Rainn Wilson is on that, it's a whale. They think it's a shark that they killed. And all of a sudden he's like, he's waiting for that, you know, he drops whatever he dropped and he's like, hurry up, guys. And then all of a sudden the shark like eats him, takes a big chunk out, and he's gone. And you're like, oh shit. And what else was cool that somebody brought up that I didn't think about, I was listening to another podcast about the Meg, and they said, and this is where I was, when that helicopter was going over the water, I was like, that shark's going to come up and grab that fucking helicopter, and you're waiting for it, and it never happens. They could have easily made that happen, but they didn't, because they were like, let's keep it a little realistic, you know, or whatever. So yeah, so it was fun. It's not the best movie ever, but it was fun. Yeah. So that's my story. You got anything to go out on? Any movie line? I'm still trying to figure out how to end the show. But whenever I put people on the spot, like Jason, I was like, you got some dialogue? Let me start the dialogue. And I started to do the Tremors dialogue, and he's like, I don't know, you got me. And I'm like, okay. So I ended the show earlier. But and then I was going to read the Quint speech, but I can't do it nowhere near as good as Robert Shaw. Fucking great. But okay, well, thank you for joining me. And Chip's going to be moving to Florida, and then we'll have to do all Florida movies. No, we'll do. No.
We'll have to do that crappy movie that came out about the alligators.
Oh, I heard it was good though. Joe Merle, the crawl movie.
Really?
Yeah, Joe Merle he went with his 13-year-old, and they saw it, and he was like, that was really cool. But then Robert Jones from Vegas was like, the one that did the Edgar Wright episode with me, he was like, oh, I just saw Crawl. It was horrible. It's a piece of shit. Like, and I'm like, really? He goes, I really wanted it to be good, but it wasn't. And Joe Merle was like, no, give me a good monster flick. And that's what it was. Like, they're stuck in the basement. There's, in the basement, there's an alligator in the basement. And alligator goes in the
We're
basement.
gonna need a bigger basement.
And, that's right. And so he's like, no, it was real fun. So I was like, cool. So we were going to go see it on Tuesday, but then we fucking slept too long, and then we're like, we don't really feel like going. And I'm like, yeah. So we didn't go. So I was maybe going to go tonight, but I don't know. But then
Look at it from my perspective, though. I'm
Yeah.
moving to Florida.
Well,
I want to see this fucking movie?
exactly. I'll let you know. I'll tell you guys, yeah, go see it, and then you guys will be like, guess what? Change of plans. We are going to San Antonio. Oh, really?
Fuck this noise.
Exactly. No, and then I did tell the wife, I said, honey, I know that you might be tired tomorrow on Friday, but you need to understand how important this Quentin Tarantino movie is to me. I need to see it. We need to go at 9:45. I said, if you can't go, I'm going to need permission to go by myself to go see it because...
No. You should have made an ultimatum.
Yeah.
You should have said, if you are not up, I am coming in with a syringe
Yeah.
to put right in your heart. I'm not going to stab it.
Yeah.
You don't need to do a stabbing motion. Just
Yeah,
one time.
Like this, like a stabbing motion. No, just once. Oh, fucking great. God damn.
And then she'll be right the fuck awake, and she'll go with you.
That's right, yeah. She'll be like, what the hell? I'll be like, oh, I'm sorry, I used the insulin accidentally. Your insulin. And then she'll be dead or in a coma. But if I ever turn up dead, check my sphincter, because my wife said she'll inject me in my sphincter because nobody will look on the sphincter for an injection point. So everybody know that if I ever die, check on that. But like me and the wife already said, we love true crime stuff. Mm-hmm. They're going to have some kind of Google searches that are going to be like, why did they look at who killed this girl at this time? Or what about this Japanese lady that died? And they're going to be like, you're both guilty of fucking, what'd you do? Mm-hmm. So that's why my wife goes, honey, I know that you like to just ramble and talk. If the cops ever bring you in on any kind of murder or my murder, say, no, I need a lawyer, because I know that you're going to go, well, I do watch true crime stuff, and I do a podcast, and we talked about her killing me with a shot in my sphincter, and, well, if I were to kill her, I guess I would do, and they go, okay, what else? And then I go, well,
Yeah.
Also, blah, blah, blah. And they're
here,
like,
sign
okay.
this.
Yeah, exactly. And I'm like, okay, what did I sign? Is this so I can go home? No, you're under arrest, and you're in jail for the rest of your life. God damn it. Thank you. Until next time, I am Philip, and until whenever,
I'm Chip.